Welcome back to the Igniting Dreams Within podcast, where we solve life and business problems that transform businesses and individuals into happier and fulfilled ones. It's been a while since we had a show like this, and I'm pleased to introduce you. Today I've got a wonderful guest, Nontando Khumalo. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me a little bit about yourself. For those who don't know who Nontando Khumalo is, who is Nontando Khumalo? Where is she from? What type of environment did she grow up in? And how did that environment that she grew up in shape her views, and shape who she has become as a woman today?
Nontando Khumalo is Boitumelo Khumalo that was birthed by a Tswana woman and a Zulu man, hence the name Nontando and the surname Khumalo. Um, I was raised in a black community of a belief that a child is raised by a village. I was raised in a community where umakhelwane will never sleep on an empty stomach because gabo bitumelo there's pap. I was raised in a community where I I I was exposed to a whole lot of things, but because what was important to me was how was I raised back home before I got exposed to the things that were happening around the environment I grew up in. You know, well, growing up, I was exposed to a whole lot. I was exposed to stories of young women being raped by their uncles, getting pregnant at a tender age. And as I grew up, I experienced teenage pregnancy, but it was a story of a young girl who fell in love, broke her virginity, and got pregnant. It was never a matter of me experiencing the stories that I grew up around. I grew up in an environment where we had e-Paza. We had everything was so okay back then economically. Everything was, everything was just coming together. I grew up in an environment where umama used to take me to where she worked. I used to grow up with white kids, the boss's kids. I used to go to white schools. I went to multiracial schools where umama would stay in at work so that I get comfort and I stay in a suburb somewhere in Emerentia, somewhere in Greenside, in Bedfordview. you know. All my growing up days were comfort because of umama who took me to Elokshini on weekends, and I would get exposed to abantwana baselokshini abawothela umbawula. And I grew up as a very comfortable child because my mother was a domestic worker. I never felt that space that my mother is a domestic worker. My father is a carpenter and he has a workshop in Boxburg. I used to go to work, no babami, and he'd do upholstery, and I'll be there doing that upholstery with him. His bosses would buy me birthday cakes. I would never miss a birthday. I'd never have a birthday without a birthday cake. It's either it came from my father's bosses or my mother's bosses. I grew up in an environment where lekgowa or umlungu was the it thing. When you went to a multiracial school, you were known as ngwana o kenang sekolo sa makgowa, and you'd get labeled a coconut. you know and I mean, all those things shaped me to the woman I am today, because as I grew up and I became a teenage mother, I started getting exposed to real life. I got exposed to the raw life of being a woman in society, and I started knowing my place as a woman in society the minute I had a child, because I had to grow up instantly. I had to view men differently because I got pregnant at a young age, and it didn't lead to marriage, or having a serious relationship with that man who supposedly made me pregnant. I grew up and I learned that men are different people on their own, and it shaped me real good because I came out stronger. I came out a young mom because, I mean, looking around with the women that I grew up with, they have 3 to 4 kids, as opposed to me who experienced teenage pregnancy and got all the judgment in the community and environment I stayed in. It really shaped me because it taught me a lesson that you might be first in all the bad things they label you as, but you'll also be the last, to experience hardcore situations because you learn fast. I experienced a teenage pregnancy, but I got to grab on and I got to learn a whole lot of things, as opposed to those who grew up and had babies at a later stage. They are still grabbing on and still learning. They haven't really experienced or saw life the way that I saw it. So the environment I grew up in, it shaped me to be the woman that I am right now today. And Unontando is very opinionated. Dumelo is very outspoken. Dumelo is very raw. She gets head on, and I engage in very deep conversations that just knock hard, you know. So I always perceive myself as the voice, I always perceive myself as Ubi Dumelo, the voice, because I voice out these things that hit home for so many. But because society has grown up to be people who hide behind keypads on their phones, it has become people that cannot face reality and voice out real life issues. So I grew up in an environment that taught me to come out and be out there in the public and voice out my opinions and just talk about these real life matters that happen.
Wow, wow, wow. This is very powerful. This is very powerful. Take me to that moment. Take me to that moment of teenage pregnancy. How did you get pregnant as a young teenager? Was it by intention? Was it by mistake? And when things didn't work out between you and the guy, allow me to use the word the guy, what changed? Because a lot of women come out of a situation like this with bitterness to say that no, men are trash, men are this, men are that. But what changed for you? What story did you tell yourself when you got pregnant? What story did you tell yourself about yourself? What story did you tell yourself about your situation? And when you heard all of those harsh and nasty words that they would say to you, that they would say about you, maybe from your peers, from the community, even around the older ones, the parents that you would be looking up to say that they would be the ones to comfort me, but they in turn become the bullets that would be piercing and shooting through your heart. Take me to that moment. What happened? What made the difference? What was the story that made the difference for you so that you don't end up like other women who got out of the situation bitter and to actually become a voice for men, but we'll get deeper into that as we'll be getting into your story. What tell me a little bit about that. What happened?
Well, I cannot say that my pregnancy was planned because, I mean, I was 17. That's a tender age of being a teenager. I got pregnant because I was passing through a phase of being a teenager, hence teenage pregnancy. I mean, I just fell into this thing of being a teenager, and bekuwumjolo back then, and not that I wasn't aware of the repercussions of having sex as a young woman. I knew these things because I mean I went to multiracial schools where you would be openly taught about these things, as opposed to back then it was difficult topics to engage in, you know. But I mean I was it was that phase of just being a teenager, you know, and it wasn't peer pressure, there wasn't no pressure whatsoever. It was just me being a teenager that was going through that phase, you know. So I happened to be pregnant, and what I told myself was that it's not the end of the world for me, because I had my mother who was there with me from day one until I gave birth. I mean, it wasn't easy, but I had a few complications, you know, that I faced as a young woman giving birth, but it didn't put an end to my light. And I chose not to be bitter towards the father of the child, because my mother then said to me, I raised you when your father passed on, because I lost my father at a tender age of 11, you know. And my mother said to me, I raised you, I mothered you, I fathered you after your father's death. So I don't see the reason why I shouldn't be able to mother you and father your child and mother your child at the same time. I am your parent. And the negative comments that came from my community didn't really bother me, because now I knew that it's just a matter of time until it dies down and they go on to the next victim. You know, Ekasi, it's always been the case. But because I think my mom was there for me, they didn't really shoot to my heart, because I knew that at home I've got the support, at home I've got the love. You know, I had something to fall back on. So they didn't really shoot straight to my heart. I didn't take them into consideration. They didn't bother me that much. And I just chose to be a mother. The minute I fell pregnant, I decided to become a mother. I told myself that I'll be a mother. I'll raise my child, because it's not about the father, whether he wants to be part of it or not. My child came first, because I sat down and thought, no, if I don't do things for this child and come out every time saying he has a father, my child will never get to live a life of being a child. He'll never experience the love of a mother. He'll never experience being raised like other kids are raised. And I've forever filled that void of not having a present father. Even though it happens that at times the father would come after 2 or 3 years, I always allowed him to see his child. I wasn't doing it for him or for me. I was doing it for my child, so that he knows where he comes from, so that he knows his father. And I allowed my child to even go to his father's family. I allowed them to take him on December holidays. I wasn't doing it for anybody. I was doing it for my child. Because when I became a mother, I realized that your child comes first. Your child should matter to you. Your child's emotional well being as a parent should matter to you regardless. So I took out that toxic trait and said to myself, my child must know his father. My child must know where he comes from, so that when he grows up into a man that knows where he comes from, so that he gets a direction of where he's going, regardless, you know. Because I saw that fighting for my child's emotional well-being is not going to help my child. You know, I resorted to allowing the father of my child to be present in his child's life. I didn't throw at him um, painful words of telling him that he's not supporting his child, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. I just became grateful every time he came and his child saw him. Even today, my son knows his father. Even today, my son knows that he has his father's family. He even asks to this day that he wants to go spend Christmas with his father or his father's family. And it has never been an issue between me and him, because he knows that his father is his father. And it really gave me a better relationship with my child, because he's very open minded. He understands when I talk to him as a mother. So I think it helped me a lot, because raising a child out of a bitter heart, and feeding him this thing of having a conditioned mind about his father being a bad person, it consistently grows in him, and he becomes bitter. He becomes a very angry child at, why is my father not there? You feed him stories, you feed him your side of the story, whereas there's also his father's side of the story, of which many women make a mistake there, because children grow up and do what they see in you. They don't grow up and do what you tell them to do. So I decided, no, let him raise him and show him the way. He will be the one that decides to take a path that is not right when he grows up. But I will forever be proud of raising him in a correct way, of showing him how to do things. So this bitterness is not what lived in me. I just told myself, I'll struggle with my child. I'll make it. And each and every day I just wake up to say to myself, my child comes first. My child is my pride. My child is my child is everything to me. It doesn't matter if today I don't have money for this, but I know I'll wake up tomorrow a better person, and I'll make sure that my child gets whatever it is that I had wanted him to get. So, I mean, raising a male child in this society should, or a child in general, we as parents, especially mothers, we should teach our children forgiveness instead of bitterness.
Wow, 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 wow. This is very powerful. This is very powerful. Wow. I'm reminded of what President Abraham Lincoln said. He said that all that I am and all that I ever hope to be, I owe to my mother. I mean, looking at just how you just shared the story of the support that you got from your mother, who said that I fathered you and I mothered you alone because you had lost your father. I mean, that's very powerful. A lot of mothers won't be able to do that. A lot of mothers would say, like in my culture they go like, what? You're pregnant. Oh, it means you've grown up, eh? You're an adult now that you engage in adult activities. Okay, then make way. Make way for your child. If you have to quit school so that you can support your child, then do that. If you have to go and look for a job so that you can be able to provide for a child, then do that. If you can't do that, get out of my house. Go and stay with that boy who got you pregnant. And yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens in our communities or in my culture or the way I grew up. And you constantly get threats that if you impregnate one child, if you ever, if you ever impregnate anyone's child, then it means that you are ready to be a father. And you will make a plan, you will make a way for your children. Now, before we move along and get to the deep stuff, tell me, what are some of the lessons that you learned from your mother about your father? I mean, losing your father at a tender age of 11. I would assume that, I don't know if you were able to feel it. I'm not sure. Did other children say no? When you lose your parents, some kids are insensitive to these things, and some might not be properly taught. So, what are some of the lessons that you learned from your father's presence in your life in that short time? And even what are some of the lessons that you learned in his absence? What are some of the takeaways that you learned from your mother that Maybe if you are sharing, someone who's listening to this podcast who's a mother who's bitter with the father's child, who's bitter with their parents because they chased them out of the house because they got pregnant at a tender age. What are the lessons that you would want to share with them about raising a child alone? What are some of the lessons that you would want to share with every woman who's listening to this podcast who's saying, I'm bitter because I never had a father, who's saying that I hate men because of what my father did to my mother. Some of them, they don't even know the story. They don't even know what happened between the mother and the father. But they were conditioned by their mother out of a bitter heart to hate their father, to hate even his own family, not even knowing what really happened. So, what are the lessons that you want to share with us and them that you learned from your own father? In his presence and in his absence? And what are some of the lessons that you learned from your own mother about your own father? And even what are some of the lessons that you learned from your own mother about motherhood and fatherhood? What are those lessons?
Well, my father's death was something that it hit me hard because I was very close to my father, and when I lost him at that age of 11, it just shattered my world completely because the first thing that came to mind was how am I going to live my everyday life without him, and how will I cope without getting his presence every day? Because um, my father was a friend to me. My father was, I was basically untombi kayise. I was daddy's girl, but because my mother was there and she is still here till today, I I found comfort in that my mother is still there, and she just gave me the love that I deserved. She closed that gap of me not having a father. She understood the relationship I had with my father, even if back then my mom and my father didn't stay together, but my mom always channeled me to the direction of going to my dad whenever I wanted to, because I was my father's daughter at the end of the day. Um, they were adult issues between them. There were fights, there was separation, but it didn't affect me because both of them made sure that I love them both and I'm in their lives, whether they are together or not. I grew up not interfering in adult issues. I don't know if it's because now we grew up. It's now a generation of children being opinionated, or is it because of the rights? Not that there were not rights back then, but I grew up in an environment where umntwana wouldn't interfere in adult issues. I would have my parents fighting, but I wouldn't see it because they tried their best to handle their home affairs, their marital affairs, without involving me as a child. I mean, I grew up as the only child, whereas I had brothers who stayed with my mother's family in the Northwest. I was the only daughter that stayed with my parents until a certain age that my brothers and sister came to stay with us. So I was the one who fully experienced my parents parenting methods, even if they shared their love with their other children, but I was the one who stayed with them. So I grew up knowing that adults are not meant to be questioned for the actions they take. They're not meant to be questions in regards to their affairs, because at the end of the day, you are the child. This is where respect comes in. This is where you grow up with that mutual respect towards your parents, because they gave me respect. I was never raised in a home that when there's a problem between my parents, I'd be the child that takes sides. I would never be involved in that, and I think that plays a major role. of parents being able to sit themselves down and not involve kids in their issues. I think it all starts with the parents, because the minute the father fights with the mother and the mother starts throwing fire to the child about the father, that's where the problem comes in. You know, I grew up best generally, I would say, not engaging myself in adult affairs. I had my parents, they loved me the same way that I loved them, you know. So I really grew up that way when it comes to uh, um, me being a child loved by my parents. And now with parents, mothers that condition the minds of their children when it comes to their fathers, that is very wrong indeed, because now children can't sit their parents down and ask them exactly what happened or what should be done. I think parents should now sort out adult issues as adults and leave children out of it. Now, children grow so fast. Allow a child to grow with the presence of both parents and let them decide for themselves once they've grown up, once they've grown to take decisions on their own, whether they want to be in that parent's life or not, you know. And me losing a father, I was a child, as I mentioned, that I didn't grow up ekasi with other kids, I grew up ekasi partly. When my father passed on, I never got to have other kids saying, "Shame, she lost her father." I never got to experience that, because I had my mother and her family and my father's family who was there for me. It wasn't that thing of saying, "Shame, it's a shame. She lost her father. Things are gonna change." I never had that, because there was love all around me. You know, unfortunately, I was never one of those kids. And having to touch on that issue of parents who would chase you out when you are a young teenager who's pregnant. I mean, that's just pure it's pure bitterness, because chasing out a child that you birthed, as a parent, that is you giving up on your child, that is you being fed up with your child. And now when that child grows up, whatever they go through in life, it takes them back to that exact experience. And you see, that is what causes bitterness inside of most women who grew up with parents that threw them out, who grew up with parents that didn't want to be there for them, who grew up with parents that threw painful words to them for the things that happened to them at a young age. I mean, I personally never thought my mom would accept me, because I also grew up with parents who blatantly told their children that you are on your own. You are pregnant, you are on your own. I'm not going to accept you. That boy needs to take care of you. And today, those are the very same women that are raising girl children in the very same way they were raised. you know I think it's a generational curse, this thing, and now it needs to be broken by us young women. It needs to be broken by us that once experienced it, and we need to change that. We need to view it in a different mind set. We need to just upole, when you accept the way you were raised and you grow up, you want to change for the better. You don't want to get stuck um in that background you used to grow up in. So I think it starts with us as young women to to change that for our children, for them to be a better generation, because generation to generation we need change. So I think it really is up to us as young women to change that mindset. And I've never really experienced that thing of having to be a better woman towards any man. I mean, I've experienced abuse. I've experienced it, because I mean, I got pregnant at a young age. The father of my child was a very abusive man. Not that I experienced his abuse throughout. I experienced it only once where it was a case where it got physical. And after that, I left because I had decided that this is not the life I want to live. This is not the life I choose for myself. You know, that's when I cut ties with him as the father of my child. Because once a man lays a hand on me, mind you, I was only 18-year-old by then. A year after giving birth to my child, I was a teenager after all. And he was a man that saw a mother, because we had a child. He laid his hands on me, and that's when I started knowing that no man deserves to lay a hand on me because my father never, ever in my life laid his hand on me, regardless of what I did. He raised me as his child. He raised me as a child he nurtured into giving love and into teaching ways of living. You know, the lessons I had learned from my father in his presence was that I deserve to be loved. And if I don't show and if I don't feel and see that love anywhere, I should leave. That's what he taught me, and that's what I saw in him, because he would love me. He would love me endlessly. And that's what I learned from my father. From my mother, I learned to forgive every day. From my mother, I learned that forgiving is not about the other person, it's simply about you and your peace of mind. From my mother, I have learned to be very humble at life, to be very humble at certain situations in my life and just forgive. That alone has power on its own. Because till to this very day, I have forgiven people who never said they were sorry. I have forgiven people who have never deserved my forgiveness. But because I learnt it from my mother, it gave me peace. To this very day, I am a growing up and I can't point anybody and say, this is my friend. No, I have people that I live with. I have people that I know. I don't have friends because a lesson I learned from my mother was that friends will either put you where you are or take you back to where you come from. It's only a few that will take you to where you are supposed to go. And beyond that, you are the one who will take yourself there. But having to drag yourself down with other energies around you in form of friends, it will never work for you. Rather be a powerful woman on yourself, build yourself, know yourself, and forgive anything and everything that is going to disturb your peace. And that is what I learned from my mother every day. She has taught me to be a very strong woman. And for that woman, I shall live. And for that woman, I shall do everything that I had said I will do. I will go get everything that I said I will get, you know. And recently, I learned a lesson from my mom that at my age, I mean, my age mates are married, others are successful in their careers, others are financially stable, they've moved out from home, they're in stable relationships. And here I am. I'm 29. I'm a year old from the big 30, of which it's pressure from society that you must have certain things, you must be somewhere, you must have achieved certain things. But no, I've grown to learn that when you're at peace with yourself, nothing will be used against you. Your flaws will never be used against you. Until this very day, my mom is here for me. That is what keeps me going every day, that I'll get there, I will be there. So those are the lessons I learned. And to bitter mothers, young mothers that grew up in environments that they were pushed when they got pregnant at a young age, it's not who you are. Where you come from and how you were raised is not where you are going. If you learn to heal, if you learn to move away from those things that disturb your peace, you will become a better person and you will see a brighter side of life. You will do things better. You will teach your children to do better than you from where you come from.
Wow, 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 wow. This is powerful. This is powerful. Those are definitely some lessons worth noting down. And I hope that the ladies who are listening to this, even the men, are taking notes to show that, you know what, these are some powerful lessons that I want to teach myself. These are powerful lessons that I want to teach my son or my daughter. And after experiencing that experience that, you know, your partner saw you as a woman instead of as a young child, and wanting to, excuse me, let me use the term, to lay hands on you. Yes, to lay hands on you. Sorry for laughing, it's not really funny. Wanting to lay hands on you, one would be tempted to think that you would gravitate towards, you know, being anti-man, or saying that no, 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 I am against men. You know, men are toxic, because this happened to me. Someone physically got physical with me. They masculated their power towards me. But one would, when someone gets to know you, they realize that no, that's not the channel that you gravitated towards. You are an advocate towards men. You are a voice for men. Now, what changed? What made you having that experience with someone being physical with you, to you saying that no, perhaps there is a reason why he got physical with me. Perhaps he's got some issues that he has to deal with, that he never got a chance to deal with, and he used the wrong way to try to assess or to try to address those issues. What got you to ultimately you officially saying that no, I am anti-feminist, considering the experience that you've been through? Because, you know, a normal girl or a traditional woman would say that no, I am against men and their empowerment. I am against men and everything they stand for, because they did this to me. I even have the scars to show you. This is perhaps, maybe this is where the slap was. This is how he slapped me. But you didn't take that story. What changed for you, and what made it different for you to ultimately take that road, to say that, you know what, I know, being raised by my own father, having had that relationship with him, having to experience life living with my mother as a single woman and living with my father, what gave you that voice, and what made you, or what inspired you to ultimately become this advocate for men and their empowerment, and being a voice to the voiceless men out there?
Well, what made me advocate for men is that I never took my experiences of my past into my present, because I reckoned throughout my years of dating that honestly I've been a manipulative woman in my past relationships, manipulating men simply because I'm a woman. I've used that thing of saying, because I'm a woman I can do this and get away with it, because I'm a woman I can get this from this man. I've been manipulative in my past relationships, and I've seen what it does to men. I've seen how I can use my power as a woman to bring down a man, or to make a man bow down to me, and give what I want at that time. And there was a relationship I experienced where I I I I used to manipulate that man to a point where I saw him cry tears. And the minute I used that power of manipulating over him, he would come back to me crying, telling me about how he grew up, telling me about the reason why he's doing certain things to me is because of how his father or how his mother used to raise him as a child. I once dated a man who used to sit me down and tell me about his upbringing, and tell him me about how it made him feel, and certain actions he took or he did at that time. It didn't justify them, but his upbringing played a major role. That was when I was around 2021, and I've always been a woman who's inspired to write. I've always been an outspoken woman, and that is when I started sharing my views on how women treat men, but it wasn't in a deeper sense of feminism. I started learning about feminism at a later stage, and I started doing my research about it. And then, no, I came to recognize that black women use feminism as a mechanism to bring down the black man, whereas we have black men that are already brought down by their upbringing or their past, you know. And you can't kick a dog when it's lying down, you know. Men are lying down to a point where they go down for women who will never bring them up, you know. As to saying that I mean, white women use their feminism to get to the top. They take their men to the top with the power that they hold because they know that their men will always take them to the top as well. You know, by so saying, I mean that when a white man is leading a company, his women will never suffer. His women will be part of that company. His women will live to tell a tale of saying, I started here and me getting here is using my power, giving it to a man so that he can also bring me up as a woman, you know. And well, black feminists use power and they channel it to the wrong direction, you know. They are angry at black men, you know, and it really brings up a question as to why are women angry towards the black man. It's because the manipulation that a black woman does to a black man is appalling, really. It's very distasteful how a woman can disrespect a man and get away with it because simply she's a woman, you know. I think women have used this I'm sorry for the language but I mean I'll say it as raw as it is. Women use their vaginas to overpower men because now a woman will tell a man that there's no other like me when they're forgetting that men have better options than them, as much as women have better options of men to choose from. But now the question starts here: how do you now compete with multitudes of other women to a man that has chosen you out of all those multitudes? Why can you not wake up and fight to be a better person than you were the previous day? Why can you not wake up and use that power to better yourself, to empower that very same man, you know? And well, I started advocating for men because I've experienced a very touching story. I have experienced a story of my sister. She's a mental patient. She got raped by a man in a community that we live in till today. She got raped and she was infected with HIV by that very same man. We wake up and see that man every day. That is when one of the lessons that I learned that forgiveness, it's for you, but not for the other person. Well, I was I was shattered when my sister was raped and we found out that she's infected with HIV and she's a mental patient. And it's painful how the justice system failed us again. Because I mean she's a mental person. She can't stand in court and say her side of the story, you know. The law doesn't favor mental patients to that extent, you know. But it taught me that that man is what he is, you know. He did what he did, and he knew what he was doing. And now what makes me happy every day is that I wake up to I go to the clinic and queue up for my sister's ARVs in the very same community in a local clinic. At home we didn't say no, we will hide it, we will go to doctors to get her treatment. As much as she's a mental patient, she cannot go get her own treatment. I have to be the one that stands and say she's my sister. I go to that local clinic where people that know me in the community see me. And it comes to people saying, "Hi, Ubi Tumelo is taking ARVs. She's infected with HIV." With them not knowing the real story behind me going to the clinic, you know. So I've supported her. For me, that's support, not caring what people say. But now, coming back to that man, sorry, we live with him in the community. We see him every day. He's living, you know. But beyond everything else, My sister came out stronger. She is also still living, and we are there for her. But because he's an old man, I couldn't sit him down and question him, why are you doing this? Why are you like this towards women? He's got his own story to tell. Even though it's not justifiable what he did, but the justice system failed us. We couldn't take the law into our own hands. We just decided to heal. We decided to be there for my sister, and till to this very day, she's doing just fine. Until to this very day, it is still said around the community that Boitumelo takes ARVs. As healthy as I am, it's still said in the community that no, she takes ARVs because we see her at the clinic every day. It's something that came to me that, what, I'm not going to be bitter towards this man. I see him. I see him on a daily, and it didn't bother me seeing him because he did what he did knowingly so, you know. But that still didn't make me bitter towards men. It still didn't make me want to hate men. I mean, I've lost a child at the hands of a man. I've lost a child at the hands of abuse. I miscarried a child because of a relationship I was in. It was toxic. It turned out to be toxic because of a whole lot of things. And it resulted in me miscarrying. But because I set that man down, and he told me that he was pushed to be an abusive man verbally and emotionally because of his upbringing. Till today, I've separated with that man, and I found peace in that. But it didn't push me to become bitter towards men. I've got so many other stories of men in my life, but it didn't push me to be bitter because I've had a man crying in my hands. I've had a man crying, telling me what he's going through at that moment in time. I've had a man crying, telling me how he was raised. I've had a man crying. I've seen men weak in my presence. I've seen men coming to me. I've given them my ear. And to this very day, I still don't find a reason why I should be bitter towards them. And it pushes me more to advocate for men because the very same men that came to me crying couldn't go to their friend, couldn't go to their uncle, couldn't go to their brother to talk about what they're going through. So it comes to show that men are not voiced out as women are, and men are always expected to be strong in every situation regardless. Men are never asked how they are doing. Men are never given the platform to upbring to bring up their mental health, emotional well-being. Men are forever expected to be strong. Men are forever expected to be there for everyone. So I reckon, let me be an advocate for men. Let me be the voice for men. Let me be there for men. Let me listen to the cry of men, and maybe, just maybe, we might get somewhere as a nation, you know, because I believe that we are very dominant as the black race, but because we fight amongst each other, with each other, we have power without control as women, and especially towards men. We use that power. We don't channel it to the correct things. So me advocating for men is, I'm very passionate about it. It's a drive for me, and I portray and put my message across every day for men because each day I talk to men, each day I hear these stories that men share. And it's very sad how women don't even, I mean, I've spoken to men who have partners, men who share things with me that they could possibly share with their partners. But because their partners don't give them that chance, their partners see them as strong men, their partners expect them to be strong men. They are never given that opportunity in their relationships. So I advocate for men, and I stand for my word, irregardless of who's against me or against what I say. I shall advocate for men, and my voice will be heard.
Wow, wow, wow. This is very powerful. It really takes a bold woman to admit and to say that, a courageous bold woman to say that I myself was toxic. I myself used my own vagina to manipulate men or to manipulate a man in my life. Now, if a young woman is listening to this podcast and they are saying that, I hear you and I hear what you are saying, but where do I start? How do I become a woman who is pro women empowerment but does not use the power or the environment that we are in that favors women more than men? How do I become a feminine in these times that we are in? How do I, or what are the lessons that I as a woman could take? What are the lessons that you would share with that particular young person who's saying that I am a woman and I advocate for women's rights and women's empowerment, but I don't want to be toxic like you just described? What are the lessons that you would share with that particular young woman? And after those lessons that you've shared, how would you define a feminine woman, or what are the characteristics that women can have, or what are the characteristics that women should have when they are empowering themselves, or they are advocating for their own rights and for their own freedoms and everything else? Or what's the best way that women can empower each other? What's the best way that women could advocate for themselves in a way that's constructive, like you just described, that white women don't use their femininity to shatter or to destroy men, but they use it to work with their men, to empower each other, to build each other up. Now, as a black woman who's listening to this, or whatever color of a woman who's listening to this, what should they do? What are the lessons that they should take away? What are the lessons that you would teach them about living together in love, living together in harmony, and even forgiving maybe those ones who have wronged them, those who have abused them? What would be those lessons that you would share with them?
Well, I mean, self introspection plays a very big role in us women. When you sit down with yourself and look at at your way of doing things, when you sit down and look into how you do things, how you live, how you treat yourself in relationships, how you treat relationships in general, it should it should bring you to one point or the other. It's very important that you self introspect. You look at your life in every way possible, in every angle. And it's very important for women to understand that they can never be an equal to a man. It's very important to understand that they can never be masculine. It's very crucial for them to know that there's a reason why men were created, why the entire male population was created. It's very important for them to know their place. Respect also comes in. If you respect yourself enough, it wouldn't be difficult for it to rub to the next person, whether male or female. So I think it's very important that we learn as women to forgive ourselves. We learn as women to to look into our lives, to take a journey in our lives and look at where we are from and where we are going. It's very important that we grab what we grab along the way and we decide what to do with it. I mean, if you're a woman, you must know that you must attract positivity in your life. You must be willing to grow spiritually, mentally. You must be willing to grow as an all-rounder in your life. And for you to have that personal growth, you need to first know that you're a woman. Above everything else, you must be humble. You must have humble beginnings. You must take your disgrace and make it grace. Above everything else, you must know God. You must be able to determine between being a woman and demanding to be a woman. When you are a woman, you shouldn't demand to be recognized as one. You should show yourself as one. You should present yourself as one. I think women need to know that masculinity is not within them. It's not for them. There were men that were created for such. Women need to know that You should put yourself first before anybody else, but you should do it in a respectful and humble way. They must know that men are not there to destroy them. Men are not there to overpower them, but rather men are there as their pillars. Men are there to 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 be with them, not to fight them. So I think women must take time with themselves. Women must self introspect. Women must know that there's no man that would just wake up one day and want to destroy you. You know, women must look into what contributes to men being abusive, or to, I'm not saying abusive men are right by doing so, but women must sit and look as to what really is this thing that pushes men to be what they are. Are we not the drivers of pushing men into being what they are, by demanding to be seen as women, by demanding to be perceived as these masculine power human beings, and whereas men are not even at war with us, as women, we are at war with ourselves, and we channel that war towards men, of which now, when it reciprocates and men throw the very same war at us, it comes out as abuse, it comes out as emotional abuse, as verbal abuse, as physical abuse. Whereas we could avoid being at war with men and actually taking men for what they are, we could conquer this whole thing of being demanding regarding feminism. I mean, feminism should be something that's building us as a black nation, because I mean, feminism has waves of feminism, and each wave has its own meaning. Each wave has its own definition, So I think women more should stop this thing of demanding to be seen as feminine, but rather it should be seen on a natural, So being a feminist shouldn't encounter being masculine. We have men who are masculine, So we shouldn't want to play roles that are not meant for us. We should stick to our own roles and allow men to come in with their own. In that way, we will find a solution to this whole thing.
Wow, this is very powerful. This is very powerful, and I'm truly blessed to be having this conversation with you and to be learning what you are learning. Now, as we approach the conclusion, what would be the lessons that you would want to share that you've learned in your own life, that you've learned in your life from your own pain, that you've learned in your own life for being an advocate, being a voice for men to advocate for them and their needs and their confusions, their frustrations. What would be the lessons that you learned from men that you would want to share with the women and even the men themselves? What are the lessons that you would want to teach us from the pains that others have shared with you about, and even from the pains that you've shared in your own life, that you've experienced in your own life?
The lessons that I have personally learned in my personal experience is that the minute you decide to self introspect, the minute you come to terms with yourself as a person for certain situations, you become at peace. The minute you forgive, the minute you let go, it helps you. It helps your inner self. You become at peace. And the experiences I've had with men, the experiences that I've learned through these men were rather, it was a life challenging journey, because I sat down, I self introspected, I stopped being angry at these people and these experiences, because at some point I was also part of those experiences. I was also part of those things, So I learned that forgiving and being at peace with yourself gives you peace of mind more than anything. Letting go of the people that constantly bring you pain. It's what makes you grow in life. And also, and to the men out there, do not settle for less. Do not settle because you are a man and it's expected of you to do certain things. Like any other woman would say that they walk away from toxic men, you must also learn to walk away from anything that is toxic and that takes away your peace as a man, because you can't voice it out. So that was what I have learned in my personal journey. People need to let go, forgive, and have a peace of mind. Let go of anything that is toxic. Let go of anything that does not build you, or just let go of anything that costs you your peace, whether you're a man or you're a woman. And we're gonna have a better approach at such issues in life. Once we learn to be at peace with ourselves and let go and forgive, we're going to conquer this thing. In my personal experience, it has worked for me and it's still working for me.
Wow, wow, wow. This is very powerful. This is very powerful. Perhaps maybe for the last question, what is the advice that you would give to the men who are with women who are feminine or feminists or who aspire to be feminist? And what would be the advice that you would give both the men and the women on how do you deal with each other in these issues? How do we deal with each other and the pains that we've been through so that we'll be able to help each other heal? How can they stay together happily, lovingly, so whether one is feminine or not, whether one is pro-feminist or not, and how can we use the relationship that we have to heal each other from our past pains, from our past traumas? How can we live together in harmony?
Well, my advice to couples that stay that are in relationships, whether you are dating a feminist, whether you are dating a woman who's aspiring to be a feminist, I usually hear people say the best thing in a relationship is communication, but they forget that no matter how communication might play a major role in your relationship, it's respect that builds up a relationship. Respect comes first before anything. If I can communicate with my partner, but there's no sense of respect, then that communication is a waste. And I would advise men to know their worth, to not settle for less. If you are dating a feminist and there's no sense of respect, there's no mutual respect between the two of you, it's not going to work one way or the other. And it's not going to work in the men's favor. In the woman's favor, yes, because she would be a feminist, she would have her own views and opinions, and she'd want to express herself in a way that a feminist would. So, should you date a feminist that lacks respect for you as a man, you should up and leave at the same time. You should know your worth and leave so that you find a peace of mind. And the only way to healing is amongst young men and women in relationships. I mean, it's respect. There's no greater thing than having a mutual feeling and mutual agreement, and having respect that is reciprocal, with each other. It's what builds many relationships, because now with respect comes humbleness. With respect comes submissiveness. It doesn't matter what you are submitting to, because once you are in a relationship with a man, you love him for who he is, for what he has, unless there's ulterior motives. So whenever you get into a relationship, feminist or not, aspiring to be a feminist or not, you should have respect. Have self-respect so that you can respect the next person. And if you're in that relationship and there is no sense of respect, then there's no love, definitely. No matter how much you guys might communicate, if there's no respect, then it's not going to work. And in the issue of coming to healing each other with our past experiences and pains, I mean, it takes an individual to get over their past and their pain. It only works. The partner comes in when the other partner seeks help. Men should learn to be able to speak up. Men should learn to be able to express their feelings and what they are going through. Men should start knowing their worth by talking. Once men start voicing out their emotions and what they are going through in a relationship, and it's not taken into consideration, that is when men will be able to walk out. As much as women express their feelings and voice out exactly how they are feeling and talk about what they've been through or what they are going through, that's the reason why women get attention in society, because they talk. And even worse, they talk it out in society more than they do with their partners. So if men start talking, it doesn't have to be to the whole world, it doesn't have to be to your friends, but once you find a partner, make that partner your confidant, make that partner listen to you and hear you out. And if they cannot bear with you, as much as men can bear with women, women should also learn to bear with men. Hear them out. When I say bear with men, I don't mean stay when he's beating you up or cheating on you or mistreating you. I mean bear with a man when he wants an ear from you, when he wants you to hear him out. Bear with him through those times, because it's the only way the world will heal. It's the only way we will reconcile as men and women, feminist or not. So I'd advise men to just know their worth, express themselves, and move away where they are not heard, move away where they are not given a chance to be heard.
Wow, no, those are some life lessons that we need to learn. And thank you very much for spending the time. With this lockdown and the technical issues that we have, it took longer to finally record this podcast. And I just want to take this time to thank you and to acknowledge you for sharing with me your views, for sharing with me and teaching me the lessons that you've learned, letting me into your experiences, your life, so that I'll become a better person and so that my audience themselves will also be better people. So thank you very much for spending the time with me. Now, if our listeners are saying that we want to connect with you, we want to reach out to you, we want to hear your political views when you're writing your blogs, we want to listen to you when you're speaking, how can they get hold of you? Where should they follow you? What are the contexts that they should reach out to you so that they will engage with you and maybe book you as a speaker, book you as a political commentator? Please give us those details.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for laying out this platform to me and sharing out the beginning of my journey. I am so humbled for you to give me a platform to share who I am out there. Hopefully, we will have more of these to get to know the Boitumelo through my writing, through my posting on social media, and through my blogging. People can connect with me on Facebook. I am Nontando Lady Khumalo. That is Nontando Lady Khumalo. And then you can connect with me on my blog as well. It's just the startup blog of which I started not so long ago. It's threadbitumelo.wordpress.com. That's threadbitumelo.wordpress.com. And then you can get directly in touch with me on 062 344 6717. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to working with you on greater projects. Thank you so much.